I have an idea. Sailor Moon is a witch, and I think that makes Vegeta a wizard. Today, I want to look at traditional depictions of witches in both the West and in Japan, how the magical girl genre developed out of the blending of the two, Sailor Moon being a witch, not in the crappy Madoka Magica corruption of the innocence way, just like she's a witch, and by extension, how this makes Vegeta a wizard? Let's begin with a simple definition. In the broadest terms, a witch is a woman who has magical powers. English has a lot of words for magical women, though. Sorceress, fairy godmother, enchantress. Witch has a certain connotation in our culture, and varies wildly when talking about other cultures. So let's start with the familiar. Depictions of witches in America and Europe. The witch is one of the standard Halloween tropes of the West, a staple of movies and books, horror and fairy tales. While there are plenty of variations, some of the most common features of witches in media are black cloaks, pointy hats, crooked nose, a feature based on anti-Semitic stereotypes, by the way, rides a broomstick, brews potions, has a magic wand, uses incantations to cast spells, has a familiar, often a black cat, often have the ability to transform herself or manipulate other people's perceptions, and get their power from the devil. Traditional witches can be found everywhere, from fairy tales to Shakespeare's Macbeth. Within Western media, we see plenty of variation, subversions, and inversions of these tropes. As pop culture and TV and movies became a larger and larger part of the Western media landscape, our cultural portrayals of witches have also shifted. Wizard of Oz, for example, had both the very classic Wicked Witch as well as Glinda, a good witch, who looks more like a traditional fairy godmother. This is even further deconstructed in the musical Wicked. Harry Potter keeps many of the traditional features, cloaks, animal pets, broomsticks, potions, incantations, but completely loses the powers from the devil angle. Shows like Bewitched and Sabrina the Teenage Witch play with making witches modern for their time and fun, largely subverting or abandoning the connotations of evil. So, how have witches and magic traditionally been depicted in Japan? In Japan, depictions of the supernatural are heavily drawn from Shinto tradition, a largely animistic religion which attributes life and spiritual significance to the natural world with a polytheistic pantheon. Supernatural phenomena are largely seen as neutral forces in Japanese folklore, neither inherently good or evil, simply powerful. Some spirits may be dangerous, others benevolent, some fickle, some tricky. As a result, witches don't have the heavy association with evil in Japan that witchcraft does in the West. However, there are some stories of witch-like ghosts or demon women leading travelers astray or battling samurai. Most common, though, witches in Japanese folklore are associated with familiars, foxes, instead of cats. Foxes, along with tanuki, are considered to be magical creatures in Shinto, and a woman who is able to bribe or befriend a fox into using their magic for them is a common staple. We also sometimes see the foxes themselves transform into beautiful women, which I think happens in an episode of Pokemon, actually. Like, Brock has a thing for a Ninetales? I don't know. And that brings us to the anime of the 1960s. Anime was still a young industry, and looking at anime from this time feels more like watching early Disney shorts than anything resembling modern anime. Disney, and Western media as a whole, was a huge influence on the growing art form. And in the mid-1960s, two very important things happened to our story. Bewitched and Mary Poppins were both subbed into Japanese and released in Japan. They were very successful and would be heavily influential for years to come. In 1966, Sally the Witch, considered to be the very first magical girl anime, was released by Toei Animation. 3 years later, in 1969, Himitsu no Ako-chan followed. Both of these really feel like the grandmothers of Sailor Moon. Sally comes from a magical kingdom. Ako-chan uses a compact mirror to transform. Other than the girls being magic, with Sally literally being called a witch though, these early magical girls don't quite feel witchy. Western media continued to influence Japan's pop media culture though, and the magical girl genre continued to morph and change with time. Looking at modern anime, the Western witch trope is easy to spot. Flying Witch, Kiki's Delivery Service, and Little Witch Academia all include many, though not all, of the elements of your traditional Western witch. Most magical girl shows, with their bright costumes and superhero mentalities, seem pretty divorced from both traditional Western and Japanese depictions of witchcraft. But let's look at Sailor Moon specifically. Sailor Moon is a manga, and then anime series, that ran all through the 90s. It's about a normal 14-year-old girl who finds out she's actually a magic space princess and uses magic to fight evil, and it's great. Here is what makes her a witch. She's a girl with magic. She transforms using magic. She has a magic wand. She has a black cat familiar. And she shouts incantations when she is using a spell. And that, friends, is witch behavior. Usagi is a great blend of normal Japanese teenager, space princess, and witch that really makes her memorable. No, there's no black cloak or broomstick, but she's arguably more witchy than, say, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and that makes her a witch enough in my book. Okay, so I mentioned Vegeta at the beginning, and if we're arguing that glowing magic power attacks are witchcraft, and we are, and bright, colorful transformations are witchcraft, which they are, and shouting the name of a magic attack is an incantation for a spell, which it is, Vegeta is a wizard, y'all. A tiny, buff, space prince wizard. And I think that's beautiful. Thanks for listening to this video. I'll see y'all down in the comments. As always, if you've enjoyed listening to this queer millennial feminist with a BA in English, feel free to subscribe.